40 Acres is a realistic, hardcore survivalist movie about a family trying to survive in aftermath of a worldwide famine. 13 years before the film begins, it's pretty much established that there was a fungus that wiped out 98% of the animals on the planet. And as a result, it created a famine. There was a civil war involved shortly after that, 2 years later. And we started off in the film where you have this family trying to survive on this farm. Food is the most important resource on the planet, period. Right? And these people, they're trying to survive off of this farm. They have a great setup, but they're actually under attack when the movie begins. And it's interesting because of how the family responds to having to kill these marauders. The youngest daughter basically makes fun of the teenage boy for missing the heart when he stabbed one of the bad guys, or female in this case. And it gave me the impression that, man, these are people who are used to this. This probably happened like a dozen times. Like for a kid to respond like that in that type of environment, I thought that was really fascinating. It said a lot about the situation that they were actually in. So the family, let's talk about the family trying to survive. You have Miss Haley Freeman, her family, they had this farm in her family for generations. Haley is a black woman, a veteran. She went off to war in that Civil War, and she had to leave her son behind at one point, and her son was obviously affected by that. But anyway, she's hardcore. She's strict. She has her kids doing chores, doing patrolling the property, going on she has Manny going on a scavenging mission. She has a lot of rules in place. She's very much aware that people can't be trusted, especially in that world. It's interesting because she has her kids killing the bad guys, which makes sense to protect her family, protect the farm, but then she doesn't want them cussing, which is funny. I sort of understand it. I think I've been around a person like this before, but I can relate to where she's coming from because they live in a world where there's cannibals, for crying out loud. Anyway, there's a network of farms, and some of these farms they're communicating over radio, but they're just going dark. We don't know what's going on with these farms. But anyway, back to the family. You have this black woman who got with this Native American guy. I think his name is Gallon. He's more laid back and chill. Haley Freeman, I'll call her Mrs. Freeman. Her son, of course, is Manning. Manning is like 19 years old. He's a teenage male looking to connect with the outside world because he's just basically survived the last 10 years or whatever just on that farm. He hasn't really been able to interact with people who are not related to him. But anyway, he has two teenage sisters. Even one of his teenage sisters at one point asked the mom, hey, what about those other farms? Do they have any people like us? And his mother interpreted that question as, or are there any people of color like us? What she meant were there any kids my age? I mean, so that's a common thing. Just because you're surviving on a farm in the middle of this horrible situation, that doesn't mean that people stop being human. It doesn't mean that people stop wanting to interact with other human beings who are not part of their family. But anyway, this family has a really cool setup. They have a really good armory filled with some awesome guns. They have obviously a farm, electric fence that goes around the property. They have a pretty nice setup. They even have cameras, okay? They have some type of electricity. They have a lot of electricity. They can have an electric fence. But there's a weakness in their whole plan. Even though the mother is very strict and very disciplined, the fact of the matter is Manning's a teenage boy and he wants to interact with females. So one day he's out on a scavenging run and he comes across this woman while he's swimming in a creek or in a river or whatever, lake or whatever, body of water. He sees this attractive female around his age swimming, and there's a shot of her just all wet and glistening. And he's looking, and I'm thinking about that Star Wars scene where one of the characters are like, "It's a trap!" that was my immediate thought when I saw that character. But so I'm not going to get into his decision making after that. But at one point, the family does come across some cannibals, and one character, I won't go into any details. One character decides to drop his or her gun while inspecting the body, because another Manning suggested that after they took out these bad guys, let's search the bodies, which I thought was a good call. The bad call was not searching all the bodies, but anyway, somebody, if you're in the middle of the apocalypse, don't just set your rifle down. At least have a sidearm. I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to go into too many details, but the big themes of this movie are: how do you expand your circle of trust without compromising your circle? Because Manning, there's two things going on with him. He believes on a philosophical level that the family needs people, needs more people to grow. Because at one point they had spoiled food, and he said that if we had more people on the farm working to help harvest these crops, we wouldn't be wasting this food. So that's a really good point. But then he's a young man, and you know that he has a desire to be with a female. And that's definitely clouding his judgment and compromising his decision making. He makes some very questionable decisions in this movie. I'll leave it at that. But the mom is saying that, hey, we can't trust people. They use you, they trick you. And that's a perspective that I can relate to more. But the big part of the film is, okay, can you really just survive on your own without trusting anybody? At a certain point, you have to trust other people to really grow. And there was a situation where this woman who's, a veteran, Miss Haley, the matriarch of the family, she's a veteran. She fought in that war. She has military experience. She's very militaristic. She doesn't trust the government, though. Anyway, which it makes sense. At one point, she's offered an opportunity to go to the other farms and help them work on her defense, and she turns it down. And I'm just thinking, maybe if they were working on this a year earlier, they would have been better equipped to stand up against these threats. But anyway, these farms getting picked off one by one. And I'm not going to go into too much details about the bad guys. But I'll just leave it at that. This is definitely a really good movie. I give it a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed 40 Acres. I really think if you can see it on streaming, it's definitely worth checking out. And I didn't want to leave a bunch of spoilers, but my favorite character, Haley Freeman is my favorite character. Kind of, yeah. She's my favorite character, and I really relate to her perspective. I thought it was really interesting seeing her and her son have two opposing views about how to interact with people outside the family. But how is the family going to really survive if nobody's going to have an opportunity to get married or have a partner? How is that realistically going to work? The mom's plan makes sense for the short term, but in the long term, they're going to have to learn how to trust other people, or else they're just going to die without partners. And they don't have more people in their family to help them protect the farm. They're going to be more vulnerable anyway. There's some realistic elements to this movie that I really appreciate. For example, the way they treat ammunition. They don't just shoot like it's Call of Duty or whatever. They rely on knives and other weapons because they want to conserve ammunition. And they made it very practical, very realistic. Another realistic element was the protagonist, Miss Freeman. She's a petite black woman, okay? And she's small. She's tough, but she's small. She wasn't just tossed around grown men. And she just overpowered grown men. It was very practical in that sense. Now, she used weapons to her advantage. Now, this character was very tough, and she used knives very effectively. But it wasn't to the point where, she just tossed a man twice her size. No, it wasn't any of that going on. So I really appreciated that. Anyway, I definitely recommend this movie. If you get a chance to check it out, definitely check it out. You can stream it. I give this movie 9 out of 10. Highly recommended. 40 Acres. All right, now that I said that, I want to talk about a little bit of spoilers. Should I? Here's my question about Manning. Okay, is he like a low-key villain in this movie? Because some of the decisions that he made jeopardized his family. He thought it was a good idea to shut off the electric fence so he can look at this girl. This dude's drawing pictures of this girl. It's at one point he kidnaps her. Let me just say this: if you're living in that type of world where there's cannibals and you can't trust anybody, if a stranger states that you have trust issues, you should automatically not trust that stranger. I mean, like, are you kidding me? Like, what kind of comment is that? She's like, you have trust issues. Like, what are you talking about? Where have you been for the last 10 years? I mean, that should have been suspicious. Later on, we find out why she was, why she just happened to show up. I mean, Manny made a lot of decisions that got people shot. Okay, and their medical game must have been incredible, because the amount of people getting shot in this movie, it's a miracle that so many people survived. I would think that infection would have killed a number of people in that movie, unless they had some antibiotics that we didn't know about. A number of these characters would have been screwed. Anyway, guys, those are my thoughts.